Thank you for watching this presentation. This is Recycling 101 for North Carolina. My name is Kelly Dennings. We dispose of over 11 million tons of garbage per year in North Carolina. That's greater than 1 ton per person. There are a number of ways to handle our trash. During this presentation, you'll learn about most of those on the screen. The first thing is a landfill. So landfills have clay and plastic liners. They have leachate collection systems, or what we call garbage coffee. They have a methane gas collection system, groundwater and methane testing wells, and stormwater runoff pipes. These are highly engineered facilities that are not just a hole in the ground. So what's happening, a common misconception, is that material will degrade in a landfill. And there is some degradation, which is what causes methane to be generated. But very little does degrade to the point that you would say, see a newspaper degrade within 20 years. And the reason for that is because we're essentially creating catatonic tombs where you're not adding water, you're not storing the material, and air and light are not getting to the products. So there is very little degradation that you would see based on, an item you put in a landfill. So North Carolina's waste stream is 50% recyclable, and we need everyone's help to reach that goal. You can see that a quarter of it is made up of paper, and another quarter is kind of cans and bottles, and food waste is 13%. And then again, 49% is not recyclable. But it's important that we get everybody to help us recycle these items shown on the screen. So we always talk about the 3 R's when opening a presentation, and there is a hierarchy to this. So we want to first reduce waste, then reuse it, and lastly recycle it. So I'm sure we're all familiar about why it's important to recycle, and some of those are listed up here on the screen. But I want to talk about 3 of them in particular. So recycling creates jobs, and specifically it creates over 14,000 jobs in North Carolina. It can reduce greenhouse gas emissions, because recycling a material versus using a virgin product actually uses less energy, which helps us decrease global warming. And it can provide raw materials for industry. Recycling markets depend on supply and demand, and they need material as feedstock, which helps increase demand. This is a graphic we made that kind of shows how recycling is linked to global warming. So by using an aluminum can made from an old aluminum can versus mining that bauxite ore from the earth, we save 95% of the energy. So by recycling uses less energy, so fewer fossil fuels are burned, which reduces carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and decreases greenhouse gases, which decreases global warming. So there are 4 places in a product's kind of life cycle that you would use energy, and so by taking out one of those stages, we're going to save energy, which again decreases greenhouse gases and global warming. So you expend energy when you extract the material from the earth, when you manufacture it into a product, when you use that product, and then ultimately when you dispose of that product. So if we can just avoid one or more of those stages, we've saved energy. So again, we talked about how material does degrade in a landfill, not to the point where you would, see a newspaper literally disappear, but it does degrade somewhat, and that generates methane. And methane is a greenhouse gas that is over the course of 20 years, 72 times more potent than CO2. So the main component in a landfill that will degrade is food waste. So we're really promoting composting as a way to decrease methane production, which decreases global warming. So there's some information here on the slide about what we should and shouldn't compost, and so the less biodegradable materials, specifically food waste, that we put into a landfill, the better. Alright, so this is just a little quiz regarding some definitions. So pre-consumer versus post-consumer. So pre-consumer waste would be something that is recycled in the factory. So if I'm creating a box and I cut a square out of the box for maybe a little window, so my product would be shown out of that box, that factory will not throw that little window piece away. They're going to they're going to put it back in the pulper, which will be part of the box again. So that's called pre-consumer, because that waste product, the little square that you cut out, never reached the consumer. Whereas post-consumer means that the product has actually been put in a curbside bin or a drop-off site. It's been processed, remanufactured, and turned into a new product. So that's post-consumer. A lot of communities in North Carolina are moving from a source-separated type of recycling program to a commingled recycling program. And that just means that instead of having the consumer separate their products into glass, paper, steel cans at a drop-off site maybe, they're commingling all those together, and then they're going to get separated out later at a MRF, a material recovery facility, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And then I want to direct your attention to the two icons on the screen here. So one clearly has a circle around it, and it means something different than the other one. So the one on the left means that it has recycled product. It has a recycled content. And the graphic on the right means that it is just recyclable. And honestly, these are in the public domain. Anybody can use these graphics, and frankly, people do, and so they kind of sometimes slap them on everything. And just because an arrow is on a product does not mean it is recyclable in your community. It might mean that it's recyclable somewhere in the world, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's recyclable in your community. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute regarding plastics. And so it's important, the fiber industry has really embraced the graphic with the circle around it, and so you can look for your cereal boxes and your maybe Happy Meal container or something like that that would have that icon on it, and that shows to you that it does have most likely some post-consumer recycled content in it. So a common misconception is that the chasing arrows mean reduce, reuse, recycle. And that's a great mantra, but actually the arrows refer to the cycle of recycling, which is shown here on the screen. You have to collect material, you have to manufacture it into a new product, and then we have to buy that product. And really, if you don't do one of the arrows, the cycle doesn't work. So it's just like the rain cycle, the butterfly cycle, or anything like that. It has to continually be happening. So the place where most folks are involved in the recycling cycle is the collection, which can be done both curbside, drop-off, or maybe out and about. But that's the first step in the cycle. And then the second step is the MRF. So if we talk a little bit about that, I'm going to flip the lights on and we're going to move the camera. And so what